All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking the time. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Ohad, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay,
beautiful.
perfect. So, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Cost Objective or KJ. I'm the director of product marketing here at SafeBreach. I wanted to thank everyone for taking the time to attend our interactive session today. Before we get started, I just wanted to cover a couple of housekeeping items. Uh, just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared with all the registrants and attendees after the event is completed. This will also be available on our website under on-demand webinars. Also, at any given point of time, if you have any questions about the content or the SafeBreach product, please send them to us via the Q&A functionality in Zoom webinar. We will be answering all the questions during the Q&A session. So, please leverage that functionality. With that being said, let's start today's webinar. So, last year, SafeBreach introduced SafeBreach Studio, our it was at that point of time, or is rather, the industry's first no-code red teaming capability that allows security teams of all shapes and sizes to unify all aspects of attack planning. We basically took everything that we stood for, our large attack playbook, the ability to add coverage in under 24 hours, and the comprehensiveness of it, and made available a easy to use interface, which was SafeBreach Studio, that allowed teams to manage everything from scenario development to actually execute those attacks, even customize them. And because of this easy to use interface, analysts of any and every skill level can easily leverage SafeBreach to set up red teaming exercises. If you are a novice analyst who doesn't know much about red teaming, you can easily leverage the scenarios, just built-in scenarios. The workflows are created. You can easily drag and drop and go through a customizable visitor to set up these attacks. If you are a advanced red teamer, who basically codes and stuff, you can also leverage the platform's advanced capabilities like ingesting PCAPs or using Python code to set up your custom red teaming scenarios as well. But the key point of any red teaming exercise is the fact that it needs to be realistic as possible. So in today's webinar, we will be covering how we have introduced branching capabilities that lets analysts replicate real attacker behavior uh, in, in your network. And so, with that being said, let me introduce our speaker today. Our speaker today is myself. I'm just here for a couple of slides, but it's none other than our rockstar product manager, Ohad. He is, correct me if I'm wrong, you're 23 now, right?
24 already.
You're 24 now. Okay. So he's 24 now, and he was a former cybersecurity analyst at the IDF. And he loves to travel. He was recently in Thailand and I believe Czech Republic, and he loves skiing and visiting new places. And prior to joining SafeBreach, he was actually in South America for nearly 7 months. He loves the UFC, loves working out, and also is an amateur barber. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Uh, so essentially, just a couple of intro things, or this is the agenda. We're going to just quickly touch on what is SafeReach Studio, after which I'm going to pass it on to Ohad, and he will cover, how what is the necessity for realistic scenario replication to understand attacker behavior, and how SafeReach Studio can help you with our branching. So again, I briefly touched on this. SafeBreach Studio was essentially created to put forth a easy to implement situation for red teaming, so that any and every analyst can leverage this platform and leverage the SafeBreach BAS capabilities to set up red teaming, to understand your gaps, you understand your visibility. So again, because we have a such a robust and constantly updated playbook with threat intelligence led attacks, original attacks that our researchers do, as well as everything that's available in the wild, uh, you can easily take this and then add whatever level of skill you have on top. So it can be fully customizable. Again, as I mentioned, you can use drag and drop functionality in there, or you could go ahead and even code as you need it to be. The biggest benefit of this is that you can run the exact same scenario over and over again. The customizable scenario that you create for red teaming, you can save it and go ahead and run it over and over again. And then the biggest benefit of this is that you can have that level of consistency to understand if an attacker attacked me in certain ways, what would my response be? Before the attacker, before I run the test for the first time, and after when I rerun these tests with the after fixing those gaps, what would that be? How this helps against traditional red teaming is that because traditional red teaming is obviously a point in time, you require higher level of expertise, and you need to an attacker or because it depends so much on the behavior of the red team analysts and how they actually replicate it. Are they following the exact same steps? It may or may not be repeatable over a large period of time. With this, because you have the BAS platform and the backend, leveraging that and that its infrastructure, you can easily run this n number of times to keep understanding how your posture has changed. And again, then because you have the BAS infrastructure in place, you can easily go ahead and leverage the integrations that we offer. We have the largest integration ecosystem. You can easily leverage that and then easily pass on any remediation insights that we share with you to go ahead and fix those gaps. With that being said, let me pass it on to Ohad right now, and he will share how SafeBreach Studio branching can actually help you achieve your objectives.
Thank you very much, KJ. So just going ahead and showing my screen. Do you see my screen properly? I
Yep.
guess. So today I'm going to focus on 2.5 new capabilities that we introduced in the studio lately. The major one that we're talking about is the branching capability, also involving the success criteria capability and the wait function, which I'm also going to mention. The new capability allows you to take different actions based on results of the previous steps in the scenario within the studio component. So because of that, that allows you to test different scenarios of what an attacker will do based on the results of what they've already done. I'm going to show you 2 new scenarios that we introduced based on the branching capability to mimic more realistic attack scenarios. They are already in the platform and available for testing, and I'm going to share some of the thought process behind creating those scenarios. So starting with the first scenario called APT29 host takeover, focusing on actions related to APT29 threat group, taking different actions. Some of them are the optimal actions and the fallback options of when those optimal actions are failed on the victim's network. So just some background on APT29. It is a Russian state-sponsored threat actor, known as one, been operating since 2008 and is considered related to the Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service. And they are attacking many different targets, which makes them relevant for a lot of our clients. And they have big notable attacks that we are aware of. One of them is an attack on the Pentagon at 2015, which caused a shutdown of internet access to many of the staff. It was a phishing attack against the Pentagon's email system. So starting to show how we made the scenario. The first part of the initial starting point of the scenario is the infiltration part. APT29 is known for conducting a lot of phishing attacks. So we took the phishing attacks that we have in the platform related to APT29, and we incorporated those into one step. The end goal of the scenario will be to collect sensitive data on the victim's endpoint itself. And we have many obstacles in the process of achieving that goal, which are achieving persistence, evading the defenses, harvesting credentials, and all of that in this scenario is while trying to remain undetected. As I mentioned, the optimal steps will be the more stealthier ones, and the fallback ones, if the optimal ones are failed, then the fallback will be the more noisy methods that might make APT29 get detected. It is also known for APT29 that they are very high-end APT. They have many capabilities. A lot of them help them evade detection, evade the defenses, and also they are very difficult to identify because they have so many tools and capabilities. So as I said, infiltration, we have many malware pieces related to APT29. We send them, and in case we're able to infiltrate into the organization using those email attacks, the success criteria here will be one of the attacks being not blocked. And in case one of the attack is not blocked, we are going to continue to the next step. This is essentially the capability called success criteria. We are able to define whether the scenario is going to stop or take a different action based on the result of the step. So here we define the success criteria of one attack at least being not blocked. And if that criteria is achieved, then we're going to move over to the next step. The next part of the scenario is execution and persistence. As I said, some of the obstacles that APT29 will have to go through while trying to achieve full control of an endpoint. So as you can see on the right side of the screen, we have the execution part called stealth or optimal. And if it is successful based on the success criteria that we define in the studio, we're going to move over to the persistent phase. But if it's not, we're going to move on to the fallback option, which is the noisier one during execution. You can see that we took a few attacks per step. So there are a few options for it to be successful, but we divided them based on what SafeBreach Labs considers a better or more optimal for not being detected method and the noisier ones. So let's take an example of execution techniques that we considered the optimal and the noisy one, just one example of each. For a stealth techniques, we chose executing an exe file using process hollowing. The process hollowing technique allows creating a process which can appear legitimate, but replacing its content with malicious content, and then running this process that might seem legitimate, but does malicious actions itself, because the way we do it is that we upload the malicious content directly to memory. It does not involve anything written to the disk, so static signatures won't be able to detect that. So it makes that execution method way more stealthier than the noisy method that I'm going to talk about, which is creating and starting a service. Those two attacks are existing in the platform, of course. Creating and starting a service would be considered more noisy from our standpoint, because it's something which is very known, very monitored by a lot of defenders, and also lack of appropriate permissions in doing so will result in some error messages on the victim's computer, many logs and stuff that will pop up alert, and will be easier to detect that something is wrong, that an attacker is trying to do something on the victim's endpoint. So this is the way we divided it, and this is the optimal way the attacker will try to attack the victim. But if it's not successful, it will go to the noisy, as I've shown. Moving on to the next part of the scenario, which is evading defense and trying to harvest credentials. I took here an example of trying to evade defenses. The stealth option will be to modify firewall rules using NetSH. It is an attack that we have in the platform. We consider it more stealthy because it doesn't require anything written to disk, any additional new software is not needed here. And it can be considered more stealthy because the rules that we can modify can be very specific to allow only specific type of traffic, only specific ports and protocols, or a combination of those, while the other traffic is remain blocked. So it can be used to serve a very specific need. Whereas the noisy method will be to add an exclusion to Windows Defender. This type of action will result in UI visibility. It is easily traceable because there are many logs around changing the configuration of Windows Defender. And it's also a policy violation. Usually organizations have policies around that, and when Windows Defender is changed, an alert will pop up immediately regardless of what the change is. So it will be considered the non-optimal, the fallback method. And we will go to that method only if the previous one is unsuccessful. So this was an example of how we created the APT29 host takeover scenario with the branching capabilities to mimic it in a more realistic way. I'm going to show you one more scenario that we created, focusing on a different topic. The next scenario is called Mimikatz propagation, avoiding detection. It's a scenario that will mimic how we would want as an attacker to run Mimikatz also in a stealth way, and then use those credentials to propagate into different endpoints on the network itself. We do that by trying to execute Mimikatz, the very popular harvesting credentials tool, in many different ways that we have in the platform, while starting with the optimal one, moving on to fallback options, and also doing the same after we achieve credentials, trying to remotely propagate to another computer with a method that we consider optimal, and then falling back to another one using the branching capability. So just some overview around Mimikatz. It's an authentication exploitation tool. It's an open source, very, very popular tool known by any red teamer, any blue teamer. Everyone is familiar with Mimikatz, and of course SafeBreach Labs as well. And we have created a few ways to execute Mimikatz within the system. It allows harvesting credentials. With some versions of Mimikatz, it allows to minimize the detection based on different obfuscation capabilities that attackers do. And then, of course, those credentials achieved can be used for lateral movement. So the first way that we would execute Mimikatz is using the Defender Pretender tool. It's a tool that SafeBreach created, and it was presented as a Black Hat talk in the latest Black Hat USA. A CVE found in Defender specifically, so it will work only on Defender, this attack. It will allow adding Mimikatz hash to the known signatures of Windows Defender, and by that, Windows Defender won't understand that something malicious is running on it. So this would be considered an optimal way for us to execute Mimikatz, of course, because it's totally stealth if the attack is successful. The fallback option of it will be to run the obfuscated Mimikatz. The obfuscated Mimikatz is just the same Mimikatz, just being modified and then recompiled. And by that, the hash is going to be different, and security products might not detect it. It will be considered a better way for us to run Mimikatz because it might be better for evading detection, and it won't be detected during a memory scan of a traditional antivirus. So this is going to be the fallback option. And the last resort would be to actually execute just Mimikatz. There are a few reasons why an attacker would just execute Mimikatz. It might be a desperation for immediate access, meaning I've failed everything that I've tried before, and this will be just the last result. It might also, in a similar way, it might be a backup strategy. I have some attack in mind that I've prepared. I have like everything that I want to run, but because it failed, I have just my backup, which is just uploading Mimikatz and trying to run it. And the last one would be intentional noisiness. as probably everyone knows, Mimikatz is identified pretty easily on the disk and will be blocked automatically by Windows usually. But sometimes an attacker would do that on purpose to cause noise on some part of the network and maybe trying to take different actions on another part without being detected by the SOC or different security parts. So afterwards, after Mimikatz was successful, hopefully, I will try to propagate using those stolen credentials. The preferred method here that we would take is running remote commands over WMIC. Those can be executed without a need for an interactive user session. It's just commands, and it will also allow taking very specific actions tailor-made of not being detected, thus allowing an attacker to take better actions without a security tool detecting it and popping up an alert. The fallback method here would be forming an RDP connection between two hosts to run those commands. It is problematic because in SafeBreach, it requires an interactive session, meaning the screen should be up, and it generates a lot of network traffic because of the way RDP works in contrary to WMIC. So the way that we present results in SafeBreach is that we've added a new tab to the test summary called the attack flow. We call it the attack flow here. We describe it as post-execution flow. It will just describe to me the path that my attack has gone through and what was the actual result. Because as I said, using success criteria, I can determine different actions for the branching, and the attack flow will showcase in green the way the attack worked. So I see here that step 1 led to step 2, but then the criteria wasn't met, so step 5 was taken instead. So this visible result path will help you demonstrate and understand the path that the attacker has gone through. And if the scenario was a real-life situation, what would have occurred? So creating a scenario that mimics reality will help you afterwards actually demonstrate the path that the attacker will go through. And now I believe it's demo time. So I'll show you in the system how we work with the scenarios, how the attack flow actually looks like within our demo. So I guess you're all familiar with the SafeBreach system. This is the security posture dashboard that I'm seeing the moment I open the platform. And just like a normal scenario, I will see my results in test results. You can see all the scenarios, and I ran before the APT29 host takeover scenario that I've shown at the first part of the presentation. By clicking on it, I see results the same way that I see them in SafeBreach today. I can see results based on a different integration. I can see my security posture score. But then moving on to the attack flow tab that I've just shown, I can understand the actual path that the attacker has gone through. So based on everything that I've shown, I can see that the execution methods went well, and I can see that it moved on to the next step. But then under the credential access, I haven't been able to actually execute those methods successfully. So the criteria wasn't met, and I moved on to the fallback methods, which the criteria here wasn't met as well. That led me to the end of the scenario itself. I can see that 101 simulations were executed, and by pressing on the step, I can actually see the success criteria of it, and I can see the amount of simulations that were executed. Of course, it is also possible to investigate the scenario results in all the common ways, such as the simulation results, the MITRE attack dashboard, and everything just as a regular scenario, but we get the extra layer of the attack flow. I have the same thing with Mimikatz, where I can see that I've run this scenario up front. I can see that everything was stopped, and by going to the attack flow, the scenario was successful at the only first part of it, but then the criteria wasn't met. I can also investigate the criteria that I've shown, that we have all the attacks were not blocked, only one attack was blocked, and etc. Now let's move on to modifying an existing scenario and creating my own. Of course, it's a possibility. Our goal is to always allow customization because every organization has its own needs and wants to create their own scenarios based on the specific threats that they are interested of. So let me just enter the Mimikatz propagation scenario here in the scenarios page. And by entering, I see the same scenario that I've shown you. Of course, I can go into the attacks themselves. I can see them in the checkout. And if I want to add additional attacks, even if they're not related, such as those exfiltration attacks, I can just add them as well to my scenario and configure it the way I want to. And let's move on to showing you how to actually use the branching and the success criteria capabilities. As you see, I have this connector item over here, which is grayed out because I can't use it yet. It is because I need to first add a step. As I add a step, I can see that now my connector is active. And by clicking on it, I immediately jump to the success criteria tab over here. After defining a success criteria, I will be able to use branching. But just before showing you this, I said that I'm going to mention the wait capability as well. It's also something that we've added in order to make attacks more realistic. So as an attacker wouldn't just execute everything without waiting, without analyzing the results. We also added the wait capability to mimic an attacker behavior better. It will allow you to have a kind of a sleep period between steps, either for alerts to pop up if some calculation needs to happen on the security product side, or just to mimic the attack behavior better. I can just define the amount of time I want for the wait capability. Moving back to the success criteria. As I said, we have an option for all attacks or just at least one attack. I will choose, for example, at least one attack. And after I choose blocked or not blocked, meaning this attack was not successful or successful, I will be able to define a new branch. When clicking on branch, if I press the plus, I can immediately see a new step popping up. And then I have the met and the not met, and I can define those by just switching between true or false. If the condition was successful or not, it will make me either go to met or to not met. The condition, I can just play with it and I can define my criteria. Of course, we allow two flows, the main flow and an alternative flow to go through. And I can add any amount of steps, each with any amount of attacks that I want. Also, those have connectors of their own. And if I define a success criteria here, for example, again, and I create the branch, it will move back to the main flow if the criteria is met. And if it's not met, it will move on back to the step over here. Of course, if I delete this step, it should allow me to have the end of the scenario if the condition is not met as well. So this was an example of how I use the branching capability, and I can actually create scenarios that mimic the real-life attacks better using the studio capabilities. It is very convenient to use and should be friendly. We do have those two scenarios already in the platform available for testing and many more to come. We want to emphasize to use that capability to create those real-life scenarios better for our clients. But we also want to allow the customization capability. So these two are up and available. So I think with that, KJ, back to you.
Thank you so much, Ohad, for the amazing presentation. 1 second, sorry, getting this back to where we were. All right, so you're able to see my screen now? Perfect. So that was the demo section. In terms of Q&A, we do have a couple of questions that have come in, so let's just get started with that right now. So the first question is, how does this work against an EDR? Wouldn't constant alerts from the SafeBreach process just make the EDR flag everything? Therefore, how can we be sure of the SOC detection?
All right, so let me take this question. So basically, we provide the information to detect the SafeBreach traffic within the network, but it is based on configuration that you may do in order to ignore the traffic from SafeBreach. But in order to test the SOC, you can just not create those rules, and then SOC alerts will pop up, but it's up to you. We have, of course, our own integrations that know how to correlate security events within the security controls, pull them up to our system, and then present the alerts that have popped up automatically from the security controls, which are related to our simulations, of course.
Perfect. Thank you. Second question we have here is, besides phishing, what other options do we have for initial compromise on a host?
All right. So again, I take that. So of course we have phishing. As mentioned, we have that in some ways. Of course, we incorporate link in the subject or in the body or as an attachment. But we also have transfer of malware through HTTPS. We have some vulnerabilities incorporated that will test WAF for infiltration and many more. We only chose phishing for the APT29 scenario specifically, but within the platform, we have many more capabilities.
Thank you. A couple more questions here. Are there plans to introduce higher levels of branching and additional scenarios to replicate more APT behavior?
Yeah, okay. So as I mentioned, those two scenarios are only the beginning. It's just an example of how we chose to create scenarios based on our branching ideas. We have more ideas in the backlog. We are going to create and upload them to the platform as out-of-the-box scenarios because we see the interest in running those as well. So many more to come. And also in the future, we will, of course, improve the experience of analyzing the results. We always strive to improve that as well. Right now, it was important for us to add the attack flow to actually represent the flow of the scenario, but many more to come.
All right. We have time for one more question here, which is, does it have the capability to run from initial compromise to for full domain takeover?
Okay, so we actually have a scenario focused around Active Directory. We call it Active Directory Full Domain Compromise. It consists of different attacks specifically within a domain network. Among them, golden ticket, silver ticket, Kerberos hosting, etc. Some very known techniques within a domain that will allow you to achieve domain admin access. So this scenario is available as well. It is created by the more traditional studio, which is one flow and not a branching flow, but we have this scenario as well available.
And last one, are these scenarios only available to run under a contract with SafeBreach? Yeah, they are part of our SafeBreach platform. So if you are SafeBreach customers, these are available to you for free. There's no extra cost for that. With that being said, this is all the time we had today. So again, thank you so much, Ohad, for taking the time to explain our new capability and walking everyone through the demo, as well as branching and success criteria. And thank you to all the audience members who were engaging, were able to ask questions. Again, if you do have any other additional questions for this, about the content that was discussed today or the SafeBreach platform, please feel free to reach out to us and send us those questions. Or if you're an existing customer, please reach out directly through your customer success or technical account manager. Just a reminder again that this webinar was recorded and it will be available within a day or two on our website, as well as in a follow-up email to all the registrants and the attendees. With that being said, thank you again for everyone. Thank you again to everyone for taking the time, and hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day. Take care.
Thank you.